Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over what we talked about in class just this past week, that being October 13th Tuesday, October 14th Wednesday, and October 15th Thursday, and then we'll also talk about what we're doing for the week coming up, because we had two big units. One was on viral marketing and one was on ethics. So let's just get right into it here. So you'll see a link right beside here with a different screen saying what we did in class on October, like I said, 12th, 13th, and 14th, or 13th, 14th, and 15th. Okay. So first of all, scrolling down these maps, make sure I was quite happy that so many people watched the videos for those maps. Give you some good geographic orientation. All right. Past this section, and now in the section on ethics is quite large, and the reason for that is because there's many topics in here. Also because ethics has become a much more important topic in international business. And what I did was I started off with an introduction as to some of the problems, and then I went right into an explanation of how ethics is affected by the six environments. So we understood that the competitive environment is the one that causes a lot of companies to behave in a certain way. The political environment, also laws, rules, and regulations from country to country change. For example, in one country you can get away with hiring people who are age 15, 16 to work in a factory. In other countries you have to be 18. The social cultural environment is different, which causes people to behave different ethically. For example, bribing police officers in some countries is just considered commonplace. In other countries you certainly would go to jail. You can't bribe a clean police officer if they pull you over for speeding by offering him $100, because he probably makes about $90,000 a year. But you can certainly do that in some of the countries I've lived in previously. The technological environment is also affecting ethics because bad people aren't getting away with things. Almost everybody's got a cell phone camera on them, which has got a decent video. And so when a cop is beating on somebody, or when someone sees somebody bribing someone, they can take a video, and oftentimes these people get caught. And so there's this understanding more and more now that if people do behave unethically, they're going to get caught, which is an impediment to bad behavior, facilitated by the technological environment. And the economic environment also causes companies on a large scale to be unethical to save margins when competition is so intense. So, looking at a couple of situations here. We talked about corporate social responsibility, the different stances: obstructionist, defensive, and accommodative, and proactive stance. And we realized that when companies have this sort of obstructionist stance, it means they're basically saying, we don't really care much about the customers, we make enough money as is, it costs too much time to be able to answer their questions, and if they have a problem, that's just too tough. Other companies realize that if a person gets a bad experience, they're not going to just stop buying your company, but they're going to go on social media and post comment and encourage everybody else to also stop buying your company as well. But still, they may be sort of a somewhat defensive stance, saying, well, we're sorry, but you have to have the original receipt, or you have to take it back to the original company, or so on. The accommodative stance is when people say, yeah, we'll help you out. You don't have to have a receipt. We have your number in the system. Or there's different ways we can help out because we have a store here that can fix it even though it doesn't have the exact same brand. And proactive is helping people before they have a problem, as I give the example here of my TELUS minutes plan and megabytes. Then we talked about corporate social responsibility to stakeholders, and that word stakeholders is important to remember because it's part of your vocabulary building, especially if you're in a job interview and you say things like, well, I'm very interested in your company and I admire how you're able to accommodate all your stakeholders' differences in terms of how the company's accommodating their goals and objectives. That sounds like an educated comment. So by watching this video, you could understand what stakeholders are, and if you haven't yet made a comment, please do. And you can see that the stakeholders are, employees, customers, investors, suppliers. But after a conversation, we realized the most important stakeholders are the people that own the company. And this is something you should never forget. Most people think, oh yeah, it's great to treat the customers right, or employees are number one. But in actual fact, the people who own the company, they're number one, because if they're not happy, they'll leave. They'll just sell their shares and buy something else, and then the whole company collapses. So that's just a reality and a truth. Then we had some case studies here. One was about Acres International, a Canadian engineering company involved in a bribing situation. You can read on your own. This one here is about Talisman Energy operating in Sudan, North Africa region, an oil project. A very, very bad situation there, which led to war and many people dying. Then there's a country of Canada involved in SNC Lavalin, a Canadian engineering construction project that involved a bribery situation. And also the sponsorship scandal. And then we talked about Toyota This video link doesn't work, but I just verbaled what it was, but we didn't have a chance to do that in class. The last example was South African apartheid. We talked about Nelson Mandela. We talked about how the fact that many countries around the world were able to get together and form a boycott that put a lot of economic pressure on South Africa, so that the government relinquished its hold and they had free elections and Nelson Mandela became president. And the reason why we talk about that is it shows that even in our modern world, where we have bad situations in countries like North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, Ukraine to some extent, and some other places where there's very, very bad economic circumstances right now. Many people are starving to death and the police are extremely corrupt. There is a way out when you get many other countries outside trying to support those people and putting economic pressure. The economic pressure on Iran right now is incredibly powerful, which is causing the Iranian government to step back from some of its positions it held earlier. In Venezuela, it's working right now, but they may need eventually to have the military go in and remove the president in power because he hangs on. North Korea, we're not really quite sure because the North Korean people are so incredibly distanced from what's going on in the rest of the world because they don't have internet access, and the government really treats their people incredibly badly there, so it's a difficult situation. So in this section here, we also talked about bribery in international business, and we talked about things like diamonds and money. And I showed you this pile of $1 million and why you can't use $1 million to bribe people, because $1 million is too small. You need about 5 or 6 million, and that would mean a big hockey bag full of money. So this is why people are using the blood diamonds, and the story is right there. Which leads to the situation of understanding that in Canada we have diamonds now, and we're mining them up in the Northwest Territories and selling them, and we actually use this little laser to mark a polar bear on the side of them, and it's also part of what creates the wealth for Canada as an export. And then the whole thing about diamonds as a jewelry item, and whether or not people would pay a higher price for that, and some other stories here about bribery situations which you can read on your own. Then we talked about viral marketing. And the reason for viral marketing is kind of obvious. There's so many ways that people get information about a product now, whether it be a Facebook post from a friend, or an Instagram picture, or something on Pinterest, or something on Google News, or maybe a newspaper. Very seldom is it a TV commercial. And so when companies are trying to sell to younger people these days, they have to figure out how to put their message in a place where it's going to be seen. So viral marketing is the way people are going. And I wanted to explain to you, even though this is strictly speaking not an e-commerce course, it is something that is a big part of international business, is using viral messages to get people to understand in different cultures. And the three ones that we talked about were undercover, edgy, gossipy, buzz marketing, and guerrilla marketing. When we talked about undercover marketing, we talked about examples of things like people pretending to have fake actors arguing as she's complaining about his cell phone use, which would then create a controversy and have people stand around and take video and put it on YouTube, which are actually, in a sense, fake videos because the actors are fake. But that's an example of what companies are trying to do these days, because people can see through the fakeness of real TV commercials, but they would be very interested in something like this and then find out that the brand is just being shouted over and over repeatedly by these actors to try to get people to take notice. That's an example of undercover marketing. Edgy, sort of gossipy buzz marketing is when you talk about something controversial like social cultural appropriation, like white guys speaking with a Jamaican accent. Also sensitive issues like the India-Pakistan border and some other things like this. Also people taking advantage of people with problems. When Russia had the opening ceremony and only 4 of the 5 rings opened up, Audi, which has a 4-ring logo on their car, came out very quickly with a commercial saying, well, sometimes you only need 4 logos. And then you've got edgy sort of ads like this, or Ashley Madison proposed that they would have a streetcar with this very scandalous sort of phrase on it, causing everybody to be upset that the TTC would make money advertising this firm, which is basically allowing people to hook up online. And they interviewed me about it, and I said, well, they didn't actually do it, they just said they're going to do it. So that's sometimes how you can get publicity. You don't actually have to do something, you just have to threaten to do it and get the newspapers right about it. And then we talked about guerrilla marketing. So this is a very interesting story because I wanted you to understand, first of all, the whole concept of asymmetrical forces. So in a typical military situation, you have 10,000 Russians against 10,000 Americans, right? Which is a normal military situation. But these days, you would have maybe 15 Afghan fighters up on the hill facing off against 500 Americans in tanks and light armored vehicles down below. And the light armored vehicles can't get up the hill because of the steep terrain. That's the geographical environment. And the helicopters and the airplanes coming in get affected by cloud cover and high altitude. So that's an example of an asymmetrical situation where you have the two sides are not symmetrical. You've got a small group of people here being able to fight successfully against a very, very large group. So in the picture, you see two men. One's carrying a shoulder-mounted rocket launcher that cost maybe about $5,000, and he's going to use that to knock down an airplane that cost about $50 million. So that's what asymmetrical means, when things aren't equal. So you have in a guerrilla marketing, what it means is when you've got a small little tiny company that comes up with a super great idea that might even be better than the expensive Coca-Cola campaign or the expensive campaign by Apple or Microsoft, and able to get a lot more people interested in their product. So we used the example of talking about this tiny Bavarian beer company that came up with the idea of these women dressed in these skirts going into the World Cup soccer, where there are hundreds of TV cameras and get exposure for their product, even though Budweiser was the one that actually paid the large price to be the official beer sponsor. They must have been really pissed when these guys simply came up with the idea of getting their own sort of exposure. So the thing there is, guerrilla marketing is trying to get your product noticed in the news, and then the newspaper carries a story for you. So there's some other points here in viral marketing that I also wanted to talk about. Advantages and disadvantages, because there can be disadvantages. Some of the extremes of viral marketing, and some examples. On this one here of Terry Tate. This is one of the original sort of viral marketing stories where you have a kind of an interesting character here who acts really, really tough, but he's a really nice guy. You want to watch something very funny, click and watch this video. So that's the section on viral marketing. Now, after that, I want you to read these things about the 4 types of marketing opportunities and international trade theories and the marketing orientation for international business. So this is the example I did with the diving watch, and this is the one that I redid in the context of Tim Hortons selling tea to make comments on that. Now, in addition, I want you to notice three boxes, okay? What I've done is I've put in the names of the students, so the names of the groups that we have for the Tuesday class, Wednesday and Thursday. And I want to update this and make sure we've got some more detail. There's probably a couple more groups in Thursday class I don't know about. And I want each group to identify how much progress they've made and as to what they're doing that's useful and interesting. And then this is for the final group project. I don't have anybody that's told me their company they've made contact with or thought about yet, but I want you to pick a large Canadian company, or it could be a medium company that's doing business. It could be somebody like Shopify, it could be BlackBerry, it could be a big huge company like Loblaws, or it could be Roots Canada or Bombardier making aircraft, or McCain Foods, any of those kinds of things, right? And I want you to tell me what that company is going to be in advance, so then I can give you advice about it and make comments in front of that class so that other people can also get some ideas and tips how to work a company, right? Now remember, for this big huge project, you just do 2 things. You write a report and hand it in like you would in a normal class, and then you do a presentation, except we can't do presentations because of COVID. So in lieu of the presentation, you're going to make a video, and that video is going to be online so that other students can see it and make comment and learn from what you're doing. So that's what we're going to do for next week, and this is the survey of what we just finished doing with the work on viral marketing and ethics. So I hope that's helpful, and I hope you have a nice Sunday.